Victory goes to the last one standing. Soul Calibur. Dude, I love the announcer in Soul Calibur. He sounds so cool and refined. I'd almost prefer him than the movie trailer announcer guy. In a world. I mean, they're pretty similar, I guess. They both have that, like, deep, epic storytelling voice. Dude, Soul Calibur is so good. There's a lot of good fighting games out there, but Soul Calibur really... And they're all unique. Soul Calibur is just... It doesn't try... It stands out quite a bit to me, because... It's not like most games where it's just like, yeah, fighting and brawling, punch punch. It's really elegant and fancy, but with a super dark... Of course there's going to be a dark side to it, but very beautiful, like... It portrays good and evil very well. I've been playing since Soul Calibur 2. Just a long time ago. I don't remember owning the games quite well. I may or may not have it. Like, Soul Calibur is it's definitely not as popular as some other fighting games, by any means. Like, you'll be lucky to even know about it, let alone, like, play it or have it. But for those who do like it, it's... Yeah, you definitely... It's definitely a big part of being a part of a fighting community, and I think when you can say that you've played or know of at least Soul Calibur, that's pretty cool, because it's definitely not as mainstream as other stuff. But I wouldn't call it like a hidden gem either. It's kind of like this, like, very undertone. It's like secretive, but it's not. So, yeah, I was playing Soul Calibur 2 in the arcade. Arcades? What are those? Well, let me tell you. But they were... Yeah, it was cool. And this arcade particularly... Like, I'm sure there was other arcade cabinets elsewhere, but this one specifically probably stood out to me the most because it was like on the lowest level of a huge mall. It's gone completely now, but it was so cool. You take this elevator in this giant mall. It's probably like 3 stories. It's not too bad. But in my area, it's like the biggest one that you can pretty much go to. And it's pretty far too. It's like an hour drive. But you take this elevator or stairs, escalator, whatever choice. The elevator is probably the coolest one. Down to this lower level it's like a whole nother world. There's just, you know, the mall. No one goes down to the lower level unless you're either curious or you're probably like teenager, early 20s, whatever. Because, like, wow, that place was so cool. There was like bumper cars, mini golf, arcade games, obviously. It was very magical. Like, it was basically you could just call it underground if you want. I mean, it technically was. Like, malls are such a cool place in general. Like, some of the most magical, memorable places you could probably ever go to. But this game was down there, and it's actually one of the first games that, like, as you walk into that section, it's pretty much right there on, like, the right-hand side. I'll never forget this. It's just this giant bitch of, like, this huge fucker, dude, with Soul Calibur written on it. I'm pretty sure it was two. Two or three, most likely two. I think two is pretty popular, to be fair. And yeah, it was cool. The buttons and dude, the game is sweet. That's probably the coolest game there for sure. Cause like every arcade has like different games, and this was definitely one of their probably more higher quality big games that they would have had. Cause there's a lot of similar games at each arcade, but there's always going to be like one or two that are like slightly different that only that arcade probably has in that area. That's the only thing that can really make them. That's how they compete, because arcades used to compete, right? Yeah, this thing is cool. It's weird because like other fighting games, I've bought them, had them, played them. I just don't remember if I've ever owned a Soul Calibur copy. I'm pretty sure I have. Like, odds are, if I played this as much as I did at the arcade, I assume I probably owned it too. But it was so long ago. I mean, I was a straight up kid at that point, like late elementary. I think if it was in middle school, it probably would. I don't know. I know it was still around. I don't know. Early middle school. Yeah, I mean, this game go way back, basically. And whether or not I owned any copies or how much I played it or whatever, I've always liked it. I've always loved it. I've never forgotten about it. And some of the older games, they had really cool guest characters. Like Link, Spawn. Spawn's a popular one, right? Well, nowadays. And yeah, they're really good with their guest characters. Probably the best guest characters you can. Like, there's some other games that have really good ones, but man, to beat Soul Calibur, that's tough. And yeah, the characters are so iconic. They're all like from this medieval fantasy age. Just these really cool badass warriors. It's not the typical like I'm tough and look at me. These are so believable. These characters, like in another world, I could totally see them existing and being real. And I'm sure there's plenty of very close, actual, real people of this caliber who are very skilled with these weapons. It's all another cool thing about Soul Calibur, it's all weapon based. Like everyone's got a weapon. And you don't always get that. I love that it takes fighting and weapons very hand in hand. Like maybe some other games might have weapons here and there, but what do they focus on mostly? Fighting. So yeah, that's another cool thing, because whether you like swords, staffs, nunchuck, like, dude, they got it all. So you can either like be biased off your favorite weapon. There's such a diverse character selection that you can it's not hard to find someone that you really relate to, or and that's how most fighting games are. But I think here it's like, you know, okay, what if I existed way back when I was some classically trained warrior who believed in my people and my land and some of the top highest caliber fighters out there, with some crazy backstory and character development, and like all these characters are written very well. You've actually used a lot of the same characters for years, like, which is good, right? But there's always some that cycle in and out. Like there's a girl with a sword. She's really beautiful, a girl with sword and shield. There's like a dude with a staff. There's, yeah, a lot of swords really, but There's like a chick with a whip. She's really hot, by the way. There's some weird dude with like these crazy knives. I saw a show where they actually featured those kind of knives before. Like, they're real knives. I forgot the history of them, but yeah, that's the thing too, is like a lot of these characters, their weapons, they're real legitimate weapons. They're not just some stupid like fake weapons. Some of them aren't as believable as others, but like, I mean, yeah, it's all kind of mixed in. Yeah, there's plenty of characters to choose from. They're all dressed very well. They all just stand so tall and so high and mighty, and you can feel their strength and their aura just fuming off of them, and it's magical. When you play this game, you don't just feel like a badass, you feel like a real legitimate like fighter for the people and like a real hero. This game has a vibe all of its own. The music, the characters, the stages, just gorgeous. And in this game, there's really well voice acted cutscenes.
Tonight, a demon runs wild.
What are you? Some kind of monster?
It has been a while since I've met such lowly dogs.
And they're really pretty. Looks like it's all like it's not like cutscenes. This game was kind of done in its own specific way. They did fit in quite a bit of stuff into the game, so yeah, like each character has their own stories and stuff, and this one, like, but yeah, like they all look like they're drawn on like a canvas. It's really pretty. But that's just the character selection mode. So pick your favorite character, or do all of them, and it tells a slight backstory of each one. I mean, fighting game lore is so wild that, like, I mean, unless you play all the games, like, you're only gonna get so much perspective or whatever. So out of this game, you get what you get. And that's about it, which, you know, is something to work off of, something to go on. But I mean, yeah, like six games in, you know? Because, yeah, that's the goal, is to play all of them. Yeah, my favorite guy is Yoshimitsu. I've always loved him. And the fact that he's also in another fighting game, he's just really cool. He's an Oni, Japanese demon. And he's always depicted so differently, too. I just love all his iterations. Like, they can reconstruct Yoshimitsu in so many different ways. He's been my boy forever. Like, I've been so biased towards him. There's a lot of cool characters, but I definitely don't identify with any of them nearly as much as Homeboy. He'll either won't talk, or in this case he does. You just never know what you'll get out of this guy. He's always like a really nice surprise. He's so popular that, and he's just so cool, because like obviously it makes sense that he's popular. Yeah, I just love all his different artworks and designs, and just the fact that this one character can be so many different things in so many different ways. We're not even just talking different like costumes or something. Like, he can be completely different. Whether it's in this game or other games, it's always a treat. I just love the guy so much. He's hard to play though, like, I mean, he's easy once you get the basic combos down. If you combos, whatever. But mastering him, I think, is another thing because he just has so much utilization. He has so many different move types. So many different ways you could do things. And most other people, it's like, you know, they have their moves and all that. He's one of those things where, like, he looks cool. He's really fast, quick, agile. All these things, but he has a weakness. Because he's just kind of messy. Like, it's really easy to want to do these cool looking things, but like, if you're not careful, you're gonna get your ass kicked. Because these other characters, they definitely don't have the tools that Yoshi has, but they have a lot more, you know, one punch or something is gonna knock down a quarter of your health or something. Like, they're pretty tough. But those characters are just a little bit more balanced, I suppose, in a way. Heavy, light, medium, however you want to kind of categorize them as. But Yoshi's just like all over the place, up and down. Depends how you play him too. I mean, Yoshimitsu mains are probably gonna play him pretty similarly, really, but yeah, he's just, I don't know, he's so cool. I'm like kind of obsessed. I mean, it is a Japanese game, it's fighting, all these things, so like, it makes sense I'd probably be drawn to him more, but since such an early age, like I mentioned earlier, it's just always been him. Even in the other fighting game, he was still my favorite, my main go-to guy. And I think that's really cool when you can find someone that you can really depend on to go into this game for and really represent him. You kind of work off each other, like he represents you, you represent him. It's like a good, cool hand-in-hand relationship. You're working together ultimately to be the best, to be really good. And if you're really crazy, you can be competitive and do like an Evo tournament or something. I know they have those for this game too, which is really cool. Pretty niche, but it's a thing. Definitely doesn't get as much of attention as other games do, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's one of those games too that I appreciate because of the fact that it's like a little more, not quite indie, because it's a very AAA game. This game is gorgeous, but it's probably more, it's just a very underlying fan base. Like, if you play Soul Calibur, you're a very cultured person because you're definitely not going to be into it as much as the others, which is kind of unfortunate, but that's why I like it, because you're part of something a little bit smaller and cozier and more comfy, a little more lighter toned. Because with, like I mentioned, all the gorgeousness of it, the really deep, gritty fantasy aspects and how like fancy everything is, that does take a, it's a part of you too. Like, if you're drawn to this game, you're gonna realize that about yourself as well. Like, you know, hey, I have standards, I have like boundaries, I have expectations, you know. I love a good fighting stage that's actually believable, like these two warriors going head to head. It's just you and your opponent on this gorgeous playing field that you deserve so much because you deserved it, all the training and hard work, and whether it's just a matter of like self-preservation, like confidence, believing in yourself, or whether it's for competitive reasons, like you want to be better than the other guy or whatever. Between the stages and what you're wearing and the music, like, it gives me goosebumps. It's so cool. And with this sixth game in this into the series, it's just looking better and better, gorgeous and gorgeous. Like the older arcadey games were definitely a little darker somewhat, but they definitely still held that tone that it's always tried to keep, that formula that only Soul Calibur can do. So it's really cool. I wouldn't have it any. I'm just glad Soul Calibur exists. I wouldn't have it any other way, because to be biased towards one fighting game, and fighting games, not everyone likes them. People like shooters. I think fighting and racing games specifically are very disciplinary games. Like you have to, maybe you just play it for fun, you get through the story, you do some arcade, goof around. But it's a very tough game, dude. You're smashing those buttons, you're trying to learn combos, if not at least just know your way around a fighting game. Just at least enough to like be able to play it. Whether you're actually sitting there wanting to be good or not. And yeah, like a lot of like fighting games are all online now, really. But I mean, these were fun to just play with your friends at home. Couch battles. So it was definitely a matter of like, hey, maybe I want to be better than my friend. Maybe I want to at least hold my own or try to win, even if I'm just spamming shit or I don't know what I'm doing or... Yeah. And this is one of those games too that like... I could probably play this against someone, probably anyone, like just some random friend. I'd probably win, because chances are they haven't played this yet, or they don't fuck with it nearly enough. Or as much as I have, whatever. But odds are maybe like they're better at a different game than I am. And then they end up kicking my ass. But to be able to play this and win versus your friend, that's cool, because I think there's definitely a more gratifying victory there. Because this is a game that'll incentivize you with the colors of the vibes for any newcomer to really be invested. Like, holy, this is pretty cool. It does depend a little bit on who you are, sure, but I mean, there's enough there to work with for sure. But yeah, and so to be the better guy or person, I don't know, I'd be really proud of that. I can't say I can think of like any specific instances like that before, but it's pretty neat. It definitely fills the heart and feels good, and this game definitely gives you confidence. It makes you realize like, hey, life's not so bad, and it's pretty cool. And it's so good at like, pretty simple really, it's same old, but embracing the good and the evil, good guys, bad guys, that inner hatred, the fight against darkness. That's what basically this whole game's about, honestly, is... And that's what it always comes down to, right? I mean, that's just life in general, like... This whole battle that's been waging on for thousands and thousands of years. And it can go back to the beginning of time, or I don't know. I wasn't there. But yeah, this game has a lot to offer. There's always an arcade mode. There's that, the single player thing. Well, as in like the cutscenes, story, Yeah, they squeezed a lot in here. It's actually pretty impressive. And there's a mode where you can. It was a little long for me, and unfortunately, I don't even think I finished it. It was just really long. I completed all the story side of it. You just fight some people, fight some main characters, some random fighting game characters, just to go along with the story that you're involved in, and you know, it's like their own little nice little sweet slice of pie. But this other mode, this big one, which I think is like their main mode technically. Wow, it's long. There's a lot of reading, which, you know, pretty standard. I want to say I remember there being some voice acting, a lot of fighting, but you have to invest a long time, and this mode is such its own thing, really. And dude, you're already pulling off arcade, training, the lesser mode with the backstory, like each character has its own story. And then multiplayer, which I only tried out like once or twice, and obviously I got my butt kicked. But this main mode that they got going, it's gonna be a hit or miss for most people, I think, because unless you're willing to like go all the way through with it, you may or may not be willing to do that. And to be fair, it's one of those modes where it's almost like a whole game in of itself, like a legitimate full-on single-player story PvE experience, offline or whatever. But it can be kind of confusing. It can be a little overwhelming or underwhelming, honestly. So that's kind of unfortunate. It's like this game, it's great and all, but I probably only really honestly enjoy about half of it. So I wouldn't say you might get like a full cool experience. Like, if you're gonna be putting modes in these games, you really gotta like enjoy all of it as much as you can, because that's all that you get. This is just a fighting game. There's no open world, there's no adventure, quest, or journey, or you're literally just fighting. That's all you can do. You know, it's such a limited experience. There's you and the opponent, there's the stage, the music, rounds. That's about it. So like, you really gotta do it properly to where people are gonna get the most bang for the buck and do every single thing that they have to offer, because there's only so much there. But it's also one of those things where it's like, you know what, it was nice of them to just include what they did into the game. Because honestly, if you really wanted to, you can just grind out arcade, do whatever, mess around, do your stuff. Or, for most people that's willing to take it that step further, just play multiplayer. One issue about fighting games, especially depending on how active it is servers, all that stuff, is that you may or may not have to wait in a lobby for a while. And unfortunately, that's pretty relevant with a lot of games, whether it's fighting or whatever it may be. So personally, I don't really mess around with that stuff too much, because it's just too much of a pain in the ass, but it's there, it's a thing. If you're willing to sit there for possibly up to 5 minutes, go ahead. More than welcome to. Knock yourself out by any means. But, because I realized, like, some people are just drawn to PvP, that's just who they are, and it's and you want to seek that no matter what game you're playing, especially if you're a fighting game fanatic. You know, that's probably the mode you're going to be invested in the most, because I can understand, like, people are like, oh, PvE, computers, I'm not even playing against a real person, it's just not real and fake. Well, I mean, bro, it's a video game, first of all, so I don't know what you're expecting here, but like, personally, I'd probably just grind out arcade mode, have some fun. My personal favorite mode is the customization. Dude, the customizing is really cool. Like, there's only probably this and one other game I can... Not like a particular one of the series, but just another franchise. Yeah, but the customization's so cool. You can literally make a character from complete scratch, which is really neat, because most of the time you're very limited to choosing some character, putting some cool clothes on them, maybe some really wacky goofy helmets and backpacks and shoes. It's a limited thing. But here it's like, man, you can choose anyone in the game. You can choose their play style, their main weapon, their fighting style, which that's pretty cool right then and there. But you could also do like my first guy I did after Yoshimitsu, but it was kind of like my own version of, like, okay, I love Yoshimitsu and his style, all that, but what would he look like if he was me, or if I was like, if I was him instead, or maybe I'm even like his apprentice or something, you know, like we train under the same deal. Yeah, I love my guy. I like the long white hair, blind. He's kind of like a dummy doll, which is really cool. I love that, like, puppet aspect of it. He's tethered with all kinds of stuff. He's got his really cool sword, and he's got all the moves. Funny enough, I feel like I play my custom character better than actual Yoshimitsu, just because I'm more invested in him. And it's weird, just recently, when I actually compared playing between the two, I played my guy and I was like, dude, I'm kicking way more ass with my guy. What the hell? It's so weird. Like, it's just natural, like, muscle reactive or something. I don't know. So yeah, he's really cool. And you could have so much fun too. Like, the possibilities are almost endless. Granted, there's a limitation, sure, but it was pretty extensive. I love the story, like, because, I mean, Soul Calibur realizes, like, they've been doing this for a while. They're just doing their thing. Great guest characters. That's probably the second most incentivizing thing. For me, it goes customization, guest characters, and then just whatever else. Because really, they've had these characters around for years, and, you know, you really do need that kind of variety sometimes here and there. But what's cool is that with each character, they do make them look different and make them look better, and, you know, but ultimately they don't really change. And my second custom character, I went more for a chick. Really cool pants. Angel wings, just this crazy combination, like, it's weird with custom characters, they always look kind of too custom. Like, you look at NPCs and characters designed by the devs and all these things, and they always look really good and professional. They're wearing matching stuff, but custom characters stand out so much. But I think it depends a lot too on how much do they stand out. Is it enough to be custom and to kind of accept that, or is it enough to be like, okay, they're custom, but they kind of bug me because they're just custom enough to like be different, but they look kind of goofy. There's a fine line there, and I think here you can really go to town. So if you're into customization, this is definitely a good choice. It takes some time, and you know, you got to sit there and kind of mess around, but it's so worth it. Because whether it represents maybe what you look like, if you want to go for that route, if you can even, or just like, hey, what are a lot of things that I like or that inspire me that I want to kind of implement into the game and with what's available to me? That's exactly what I did. I named my Yoshimitsu after Samanosuke, a character, the main character from my favorite game. So that really meant a lot to me to be able to kind of make my own depiction of this kind of mix and blend of two different warriors from two different worlds kind of coming together and fusing. I've always loved fusion. Taking one thing from one thing from another, and just combining it and coming up with the whole, like alchemy, just coming up with a whole new kind of thing, a new creation. It's really cool. And then my chick character, I named her Gato Angemon from Gatomon and Angemon. Or Angelwomon, rather. Either way. From Digimon. So that was really cool. I've only made 2 characters, but honestly, with just those 2, I am so happy. Like, that was the best part of the game, for sure. I had to feature that, especially because it's just... It's pretty cool and unreal. Because I've played fighting games like my whole life. All of them. Well, not all of them, but most of them. And I gotta say, this one, dude, you have the customization. You have so much going for it. It's so hard to like deny. And it's funny because it's like they have their main story, their main plot, but just like other games, they've been doing it for so many years that it really does become a lot more about the extra stuff that there is. Yeah, I think the story is the overall story that they got going on. I definitely think that's something that needs to be experienced on one's own terms, because it's really good. Especially as like a kid, it's playing games like this, it's always very positive, it's always very pure. Like, there's something about fighting, like I've never been a fighter myself, but I just have so much respect for the whole, like, you know, it's a cruel world, there's bad people out there, but it's up to you to defend yourself, to defend people around you that you love and care about, and for the good of mankind and humanity and rising above. All these good things has always come from fighting, unfortunately. There's a lot of honor and just martial arts, and yeah, it's so cool. It's one of those things I've never been involved in personally, but from a distance, I just look up to it. I really do. It's inspiring. knowing that there's people out there who are just 24/7 built and trained to be these elite classic, very like soldiers, but not quite that same aspect. Just see, it doesn't even always have to be about that. It could just be the simple fact that like you're really good at what you do, and you're probably a really nice, cool person who has a good heart and a good balanced mind, and you push yourself, you're disciplined, you learn. You like learning and knowing more and being better and all these things. That's what you get out of fighting. Fighting games. But yeah, I love Soul Calibur. I have nothing bad to say about this game particularly, other than their big single player mode. I realize it's a fighting game. You're not really always gonna get a great single player mode out of it, but it's possible. There's some fighting games where I'd actually probably rather just play through the campaign or whatever you want to call it. Mess around with arcade or something and, you know, probably call it good. Obviously, I used to play games a lot differently back then, like, especially as a kid. That might be the only game that you have, or like, you have a lot more free time back then, and your brain is just working differently, and yeah. Other than that, no complaints. It's kind of unfortunate that it's a big chunk of the game that may or may not get utilized by most people. But still good. There's other things to do, so not too bad. But yeah. Soul Calibur 6.